A night that wasn't meant to be. A night we were all hoping somehow the basketball gods would send the Bulls a gift after a disappointing season and win the draft lottery, but I think we all knew deep down it wasn't going to happen. 8.5% chance of keeping the pick. If you guys caught my live stream, you saw the disappointment when they read the number 11 pick, which, by the way, so many Bulls fans were duped into believing we had moved into the top 4 because it wasn't the Bulls logo displayed at number 11, but rather the Orlando Magic. I'm shocked that many Bulls fans, including my guys over at CHGO, fell for that when they did this same thing 2 years ago. I absolutely fell for it 2 years on a live stream. Wasn't going to let it happen yet again. You kind of had to know you would be looking out for either the Magic logo or the Bulls logo there at 11. Anything else would have meant the Bulls moved up in the top 4. But either way, Bulls send their pick to Orlando, the final payment in the Vucevic trade. And with the Bulls also having traded away their second round pick in the draft, they will have 0 picks for this upcoming NBA draft. No cap space, few trade assets to work with. So the question now is, where do the Bulls go from here? And it's what we'll be talking about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, as I mentioned in my video from yesterday before the draft lottery, the Bulls offseason and what potential moves could be made were kind of in this waiting period and still continue to be in a waiting period as they see how the rest of the season, the playoffs anyway, shake out with some of these current playoff teams and how they finish out the year and whether they'll be looking to make moves by way of trading some players or players declining player options if they have them. But with the draft lottery over and the Bulls now knowing they won't have their pick, whether the intention would have been to keep the pick or trade it, we know that it's not happening. And what we also know now are the teams that actually do have their picks, more specifically some of these teams that potentially still could be looking to compete now and might be looking to actually trade that lottery pick. For example, we know the Blazers have a decision to make. Either make a late push, last push, to try and win with Damian Lillard, as he himself has said he has zero appetite for being on a team that is years out from competing, not at this stage of his career, or they trade Lillard, get a big haul for him, start fresh, start rebuilding, which honestly is probably the way to go, especially considering they got lucky in the lottery and moved up to getting the 3rd pick, which is huge for them. And I'm sure by trading Lillard, they would be able to secure multiple first-round picks in return. But as much as I personally think that would be the smarter thing to do if you're the Blazers, something tells me they're not going to do that. They're going to make a last-ditch effort in going after another star or stars to put next to Dame. And if that ends up being the case, the Bulls could benefit in a couple of ways. They could either relinquish, meaning the Blazers, relinquish the lottery-protected pick that is owed to the Bulls. That way they can actually have that pick to be able to package in a trade with the 3rd pick. Otherwise, if it's owed to the Bulls, they're not able to actually move it. And whatever else, young players, etc., to try to bring in some big names, win-now pieces. The Bulls can try and squeeze and leverage that to get them to give up the 23rd pick in the draft, which is owed to them from the New York Knicks. To say, here you go, you get your first-round pick in that 3-team trade for the Lauri Markkanen deal that also sent the Bulls Derrick Jones Jr. Give us a lottery-protected pick back, and we're done, transaction complete. Or the other route, the Blazers actually try and work with the Bulls to get one of the big 3 as one of the stars to put next to Lillard and send the Bulls the number 3 pick. We already know that a lot of teams are going to be calling the Blazers and asking about the number 3 pick. The question is, how much are teams going to be willing to give up to get that pick? Which will most likely become Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson, 2 incredibly talented players that both have star potential. Would the Blazers try and make a push for Zach LaVine or perhaps DeMar DeRozan? I personally think the fit wouldn't be the best for the Blazers, but I don't know. Maybe a player like DeMar gives the Blazers added scoring, which they need. Unlike the Bulls, the Blazers would actually have shooting around DeMar, which you need outside shooters when you have a player like DeMar DeRozan on your roster. The Bulls would have to send something else for DeMar, though. I mean, for his age, the fact that he's on an expiring contract, like DeMar alone is not worth the number 3 pick, not in a draft class like this especially. And given the fact that other teams would have more to offer in the way of younger stars, you would probably have to include another future first-round pick, which the Bulls can't trade a pick until 2027. You might even have to take on a bad contract if you're the Bulls, like Nurkic, and then figure out what to do with him after. But hey, getting the number 3 pick in a stacked draft class, that's pretty big. Like I mentioned, there's also the possibility of trading Zach LaVine for the number 3 pick, but I mean, if you're trading Zach at that point, you might as well be tearing everything down and starting over with a rebuild rather than having all these younger guys with DeMar DeRozan and Vucevic. That's if they keep Vuce. And I think we all know, especially based on the front office and what they've said, they're not going to be blowing things up. They're going to try to push to still be competitive now, so I see it unlikely they would look to move Zach for the number 3 pick. The Blazers pick aside, though, the other lottery team that could potentially end up being a trade partner for the Bulls is the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavs, after an incredibly disappointing season, they made a big splash at the deadline to get Kyrie Irving. When they realized things weren't working with the group that they had, it actually ended up becoming worse after the trade and missed the play-in entirely. But the good thing for the Mavs, they realized at the end of the season, they need to lose out their remaining games, one of which was against the Bulls, to ensure that they could keep their pick, which is traded to the Knicks but was top 10 protected. They ended up finishing with a 10th worst record in the league, which netted them the number 10 pick in the draft. Now, I don't know if the Mavs would be looking to package that pick in a deal. Getting some young talent might actually benefit them, and a lot of this depends on whether they actually re-sign Kyrie Irving or not. But the Mavs, like the Blazers, are another team that is looking to win now. I mean, they went to the conference finals last season, and they have one of the best players in the world in Luka Doncic, who they need to keep happy before he starts making trade demands. And so because of that, I wouldn't be shocked if they look to trade the number 10 pick for more win-now pieces to put around Luka, especially if the plan is to re-sign Kyrie Irving, which I think would be a mistake, but hey, they gave up quite a few assets to get Kyrie. You're not about to let him walk on a half-year rental. And Zach LaVine has already been involved in trade rumors with the Mavericks in the past. There have been trade rumors that the Mavs are interested in bringing in a player like Zach. The challenge, though, is Zach's contract. Like, if you're not trading Luka, the Mavs are going to have a hard time finding all the pieces for salary filler to make the trade work. And as enticing as the number 10 pick sounds, yeah, Zach is worth more than that. And the Mavs don't really have a ton of future picks to trade. I believe the soonest pick they're able to trade is the 2029 pick, which, when it's that far out into the future, isn't as valuable. And for me personally, I'm not interested in taking the Mavs' bad contracts like Tim Hardaway Jr. or Davis Bertans to make the money work just to get the number 10 pick from Dallas. There is also Vucevic, though. The Mavs do need a starting level center. Maxi Kleber, he's decent, but he's not as good and productive as someone like Vucevic. The Mavs were the worst rebounding team in the NBA last season. Vucevic is one of the best rebounders in the league. Could the Bulls somehow work out a sign-and trade with the Mavericks for the number 10 pick? Is Vucevic even worth the number 10 pick at this point in his career? Probably not, but the Mavericks have also made poor decisions in the past, so who knows if they would bite. Bulls would maybe need to throw in another player like Coby White, also a sign and trade, to make it enticing enough to give up the number 10 pick, but either way, it's an option the Bulls should explore. I didn't mention DeMar in a potential trade for the Mavericks because as good as DeMar is, it would be a horrible fit for the Mavs that already have two ball-dominant, heavy isolation scorers in Luka and Kyrie. Adding DeMar would be a disaster, and Jason Kidd would have no idea what to do with himself with those three players. So I think DeMar would be out for a potential trade there with the Mavericks. The only other team that may look to move their pick, but probably more unlikely, is the Pelicans, who have the 14th pick. I mean, they have a good team. They were actually one of the top teams in the Western Conference before Zion got injured again. If they can stay healthy, they might look to move that pick for more established pieces. They traded for CJ McCollum last year, so they're not messing around. They are trying to build for the now, but we'll see. They may want to keep that pick, as I'm sure they're starting to build some insurances around Zion if the man is just always injured. But look, the potential draft pick trades that the Bulls could obtain to actually have a pick this year, that aside, yeah, it's not good. There really aren't a lot of options for the Bulls to be able to work with, which we talked about. They have to figure out what they're going to be doing with Vucevic, who I believe they will be forced to re-sign because they don't have the cap space to bring in other free agents to replace him unless it's by way of a sign-and trade. Trading DeMar is an option, as he does have value, especially for a potential contending team, but it's not going to be as much as you think, given he's on an expiring deal and he's going to be 34 years old. And with the limited cap space, the fact that we know the Bulls are not going to be going into the luxury tax, no draft picks, and blowing up the roster is unlikely, means the Bulls are going to have to get very creative in terms of making meaningful upgrades to this roster. You're talking about potential sign-in trades from other free agents around the league because they can't afford to sign them outright, would have to be done via a sign-in trade, and trying to find some improvement on the margins by using their exceptions like the mid-level exception, the biannual exception, but really, that's it. I know it sounds super negative, but this is where the Bulls find themselves, and it's on Acme to figure out how to dig themselves out of this hole. Would love to hear what you guys think, though. Let me know in the comments what you think is next for this team and how they can go about actually improving the roster. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.